Weather instruments for kids activity picks up in May. As I progress through the year in weather, the month of May is next. Weather instruments for kids activity becomes much more interactive this month. With the month of May, you will be able to share the plush green Earth's awakening from a deep winter's sleep with your favorite child, using weather instruments to show them how the warmer air and higher sun angles make for a whole new set of weather situations that need to be explained. It is wondrous with the opening of leaves, of blossoming of lovely flowers, and all the delights of the new leaves of the trees. So it is also a time of sweet, lovely smells and new vibrant colors and the fresh airs of spring. Explaining heated weather activities with weather instruments for kids. So you may start out by explaining the following activities created by springtime weather patterns. Using the weather station readings from your favorite 5-in-1 weather station or your new 3-in-1 weather station will help the kids around you understand what is happening around them daily. I am going to explain 3 springtime weather things that you may use to perk up your kids' interest in weather instruments. Tornadoes are usually more predominant in the spring, in April and May. Thunderstorms start popping up both in the daytime and nighttime in May. Collecting of heavy rainfall amounts. Okay, so I am going to look at these 3 May weather situations and the weather instruments for kids that are used to involve their skills, thinking abilities and interest in the weather. Involving them in studying the weather will help their critical thinking skills, which will make them better, responsible citizens of their communities and the overall world they live in. Instruments for helping understand tornadoes. The interest in tornadoes can be either you know enough for survival, or you can be a helper in warning the general public, or you can be the extreme, where people become storm chasers. Instruments involved will be the thermometer, the anemometer, and the barometric pressure. Most 5-in-1 weather stations have the necessary weather instruments to help kids understand how to be aware of a tornado warning at the least. In this article, you will learn weather instruments for kids activity picks up in May, explaining heated weather activities with weather instruments for kids, instruments for helping understand tornadoes, studying thunderstorms with kids, increased rainfall collection activity. You can have an informed and excited weather kid this May. Conditions present would be dropping in the barometric pressure, a rapid increase in the wind with higher wind gusts, and then very cloudy and heavy rain conditions. In general, it is usually much more complicated than this, but if you develop a conversation about what a tornado is and using weather instruments to become aware of possible weather conditions, then the tornado discussion will one day be useful information to a kid. I have written an interesting article about tornadoes. Tornado alley season starts, so what about it? Studying thunderstorms with kids. May is when the temperatures are getting much warmer in your locale. With this increase in sun angle and the increase in the extreme differences between a cold front, a high-pressure system, and a warm front, a low-pressure system, you will be getting a ramped-up thunderstorm activity in your locale in the month of May. This is usually very noticeable as we haven't seen thunderstorms for probably the last 6 months. A note of interest to you as a weather fan, they actually have the scientific tools, sensors, now that can detect lightning strikes for you on your weather station. Accurite makes a lightning detector for their weather stations. This is mentioned by me in the post Accurite 5-in-1 weather station reviews used to examine the 01535M. At the bottom area of that post, you can read more about the Accurite 06045M lightning detector sensor. A very interesting item to have on your weather station. Kids can see how far away a lightning strike was, and it also shows how many of the strikes occurred during the thunderstorm you just experienced. All of these activities are fun for the children. Increased rainfall collection activity. The last point to be made with your child for the month of May is the collection of the rain with the rain gauge on your weather station. You are coming out of the colder months, where the precipitation often was in the form of ice, hail, freezing rain, and snow. The weather station doesn't handle measuring these forms of precipitation very well. Snow just sits in the rain gauge. Freezing rain, once it melts, will be a small amount of rain to be measured. So keeping all of this in mind, this is now a great opportunity to be using the rain gauge in full force as it is designed to be used. Please note we are talking about my climate, where I live. Many of you get the opportunity of having many more months to be using your rain gauge. You need to be able to explain to your child how your weather station's rain gauge works. Most work on the same principles, but some are more effective in being used than others. How much money was spent on the weather station generally determines the value of how good the rain gauge will do its job. Spring weather progress: a comparison from April to May. There are some rain gauges that have features that will add to their effectiveness in doing their job. The weather stations will show how much rain has been collected in the last 24-hour period and at the rate per hour it rained. You can have an informed and excited weather kid this May. May does present itself as an interesting month for weather. I have presented 3 ways you may involve your kid in using weather instruments for kids to teach your child about these prime weather types that are usually very important to the average person. If you are just living in your climate this May, then remember what you are teaching your child now will last with him or her a lifetime. I still remember teaching points that my science teachers stressed while learning in middle school and high school. Long ago, but not forgotten. Read more about teaching kids about weather instruments. View related posts below. Kids' interest in weather: how to best introduce your child to the weather. Kids' interest in weather: how to best introduce your child to the weather is a very important subject to me. I go into some ideas on how to stir up the young minds. This is a discussion about cultivating an interest in weather in our kids, both older and younger as well. Weather in April: how to better use weather instruments. Weather in the northern hemisphere starts really shifting gears by the time the month of April arrives. Where I have lived most of my life, April brings an awakening from a deep winter's sleep